It takes more than detailed knowledge of BGP to be a great software engineer. This is episode 103 of the Soft Skills Engineering Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Dance.
I'm your host, Dave Smith.
I guess we should say what BGP is. We don't have to explain it. Border Gateway Protocol. It's a thing.
I thought it was
Dave
big,
knows stuff
grumpy Patreon.
Let's see. What else could it be? Buttered GNU preprocessor. That was an early iteration of the C macro preprocessor.
Buttered grep psychology.
Okay. I like that one. I think we could do a whole episode of this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we got 40 minutes to burn. Let's do it.
All right. Buckle in.
Buckle.
Just kidding.
Group podcast.
Buckle great protection. I feel like I want to say like buckle your seatbelt in a way that says BGP, but I won't.
That's okay. I'm watching our real-time metrics. We just lost 300 users or listeners.
Okay. You know what? Double down. Those were the people that weren't committed.
We just thinned the
herd. Yeah.
Well, speaking of herds, I'd like to thank our 3 patrons who are contributing at the monthly level, so they get a shout out every week. We have Ken Howard, Sean Clayton, and Dustin Coates. Thanks, patrons. We love you.
Thank you so much. If you want to join their illustrious ranks, you can go to www.patreon.com/softskillseng, or there's a link on our website that'll take you there. We don't have a lot of leverage over you because, we like doing this, so we might just do it anyways. But it certainly helps. It helps make us feel appreciated, and it helps pay for stuff around the podcast.
Just so you know, Jameson is really bad at sales.
I totally am. I negotiated my money down in a thing I did a couple of days ago. It was great.
What?
It wasn't like a big deal, but
okay.
It wasn't for my job.
All right.
Should we answer some questions?
Well, yeah, but first we had a cool story that someone wrote in from Facebook. We don't have a Facebook page. This is actually from a Facebook engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to share this one?
I totally do. This is from a listener named Dan. In episode 101, you covered giving gratitude to other developers for good things they've done. At Facebook, we have a tool called ThanksBot. It was built in a hackathon a few years ago and quickly became a core part of our culture. We can write #thanks with a message in post comments and chat messages on our internal Facebook instance, on pull requests, tasks, and pretty much any other internal tool. The message goes to you and your manager and is aggregated into your performance review cycle. This style of feedback can be transformative for satisfaction.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
I really like having a codified way to recognize people. At one of my early jobs, we had just a little chat bot, and you could just plus someone's name. And it just became a way of recognizing people that helped you. And there was a command you could do to list people's helpfulness. So maybe that could create some
leaderboard
weird incentives to get on the leaderboard. But it was just habit there. Every time someone did a little thing to help you, just say this person plus. And it was a little public shout out to them and made people feel good.
What happened next? Where did it go? Did it go to their manager?
Nothing. No. It was just like everybody kind of knew that person helped you.
It was just kind of a points thing,
just a points thing.
For points.
Yep.
Well, I like the Facebook one because I think it scales really well to the whole organization, and it's actually integrated into your annual review process. I like that.
Yeah, there was no annual review process at this job. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah, super cool. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for writing that in. If anyone else has a comment you'd like to add, feel free to hit us up on softskills.audio and click Ask a Question, and then just do a head fake and write a comment instead.
Psych! All right. Speaking of questions, would you like to read our first one?
Yeah, sure. This one comes from an anonymous listener who says, I became a software engineer because I loved my CS classes and the process of writing software solo for school assignments. I'm in my first job out of school working on a cross-functional product engineering team. I'm struggling to contribute anything other than finishing the tasks that are assigned to me. Other engineers take initiative to prioritize work for our team, propose solutions regarding specs and organizational alignment, and volunteer to take care of blockers. I pay attention during stand-up, but when I try to participate in the conversation, my teammates' responses indicate that the questions or concerns I bring up are irrelevant and should not be discussed during stand-up. Someone suggested I volunteer for more things as a way to learn about the organization and team process, but it's not intuitive to me what the team needs that I can volunteer to help with. My knee-jerk reaction is to find a job at another organization that values hard skills more. But I would like to first give my best effort to improve on this front. Any suggestions for how to be a more effective team player, not just someone who goes through Jira tickets?
Sounds like Jira's the problem here.
There's your problem.
What if we just blame it all on the tool? What do you think, Dave?
Well, I have some good news for you. If all you ever do is work on Jira tickets and don't do anything else to help your team, you'll probably get a chance to get another job anyway.
Why is that?
Well,
I don't quite get what you mean.
Pardon?
Are you suggesting Jira is not an effective measurement of someone's output and productivity and value?
Even though it is the ultimate measure of all human value, I was being a little bit subtle in suggesting that team members who do nothing but work tickets off the ticket queue and nothing else, in my opinion, are missing out on a lot of the most important things that we do as engineers, which is think of new and exciting ways to do things, or more effective ways to serve our customers and build software that works better. And you really have to participate in the social dynamic of the team more than in a greater capacity than just fixing Jira tickets, I think.
Yeah. I think that's the question asker's desire. It sounds like they are interested in that. They're just not sure where to start. And it feels like they've maybe tried a little bit and it hasn't gone super well.
Yeah, and I want to read into a little bit of what this listener wrote. I might go somewhere else that values hard skills more. Did that stand out to you, Jameson?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, me too.
In my experience, a developer's effectiveness is much more bounded by their soft skills than by their technical skills, as long as their technical skills meet some minimum bar.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum bar is probably different depending on what team and organization and product space you're in, but there's a minimum technical bar, and then above that, it helps you, but it's way more effective in lots of places to invest in soft skills. This is a sales pitch for our podcast, I just realized.
Oops,
Hence,
well,
you should listen to us.
Yeah, you are good at sales, after all.
Yeah. I don't think there's this magical, verdant land of just hardcore, hard skills. Don't have to worry about this messy people stuff, especially if you work in large systems, because the world we live in, those are so interconnected, and you're building components that other people use, and you're using other people's components, and like you just can't build a lot of really successful commercial software by yourself these days. And if you do build it by yourself, congratulations, you're now like a full-time salesperson, marketer, support, CEO, accountant, like just saying like, well, there's got to be a place where I can just put my head down and crank out technical work. That doesn't feel like a great solution to this problem for me.
Yeah, me too. So your heart's in the right place, wanting to contribute in more ways than just closing out Jira tickets. It sounds like maybe this listener picked the wrong time to bring it up. You mentioned during stand-up, and got shut down pretty quick, right? Like, it says here that my concerns are not relevant and should not be discussed during stand-up. And that's probably true. Stand-up is usually a time for quick, short status reporting and focus rerouting and motivational and whatnot, and accountability time, but it's not really the time to discuss broader problems like, hey, I think we have an issue with our code review process, or I think we have too many bugs and we need to find a way to do a better bug triage ingest process and so on. Like, that's not the time for that discussion. Everyone's literally standing on their feet, and it's supposed to make you uncomfortable so you don't stand there for too long. Yeah.
I wonder if some of it is other engineers sometimes talk about things like that in stand-up, but they have more context, so it's a quicker conversation. So maybe they're just like, remember this thing we talked about? I'm tweaking our process, and everyone's like, oh yeah. Whereas if you're newer to the team and newer to the code base and organization, you might be instead saying, what if we tried this totally new thing, just because you don't have all the context. And that's a good fit for a different place than stand-up, like Dave said.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to clarify what I said earlier about hard skills. I really think if what you want to do is just sit in a room and code, that's going to be hard to find, especially on more interesting problems.
Mm-hmm.
But you like unlock the ability to do hard, fun technical things by working with other people.
Yes.
So it's more like a carrot than a stick. If you want to work on the fun, interesting stuff, you need consensus and you need other people's support. And just going off and doing it by yourself isn't a great fit, I think, for a lot of teams. You also mentioned that someone suggested that you volunteer as a way to learn about the organization and team process, but you're kind of unsure what to volunteer with specifically. You could just ask for help in that, right? Just say, I'm not sure what the biggest pain points are. Do you have any suggestions? And then guaranteed there's some stuff that people wish was different, that they would love someone to help out.
When should they do that? Like, what's the right time to broach that question? I
mean, you could just ask your manager. I guess, yeah, stand-up might not be the best time. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I'm thinking that. I think asking your manager is a great idea.
Yeah, you could just like send an email to the team, ask people in chat. I don't know. I would ask your manager as a default.
Yeah, start there. Maybe even talk to some people one-on-one and just say, hey, what are some of the things that are frustrating or hard to work with, or, things like that.
Yeah. As a newer person on the team, you lack a lot of the baggage. So you don't have a lot of the context, but you also have fresh, just I don't know, your eyes are undimmed by cynicism. So I think in some ways newer people on teams are great fits for tackling these longer standing problems or things that have just kind of lingered and nagged for a while, but no one has ever just said, this is causing us pain every time. We should just buckle down and fix it. So I imagine there are great things to work on. And if you don't know off the top of your head, you can ask people for help. Another suggestion is instead of just kind of thinking up a thing and then just going off and doing it, I would try pretty hard to validate the problem with other people first. That will both make sure that people know what you're doing. It'll give them time to give input if you're not sure what to work on. And also you want to make sure that if you go off and work on this thing, people will care that you did it instead of seeing it as a waste of time, taking you away from the valuable Jira ticket closing work that you're doing. Because you have to do that, right? That's like part of the job. You have to get some of the stuff done that we said we were going to get done.
Yeah, and I think I kind of made fun of that a little bit too much, right? Like, you still have to do that. That needs to be like 80-90% of your focus. But it shouldn't be the only thing you do. Sure.
And ideally, you would work broader improvements into that Jira ticket process.
Yeah.
You have to balance those things a little bit. Some of it, too, might just be paying your dues, right? You got to show you can just get normal things done.
Yeah. Also, these things take time to recognize and really internalize. I mean, I remember being new to a team and you're like, wow, everything's great. No one has any problems. Our team has good processes. And then like 6 months later, you're like, this whole place is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, that's true. Some of it is you only see problems there are certain situations that trigger problems to crop up. And that's not the day-to-day operation of the team sometimes. It's just like, oh yeah, every time this other system's version bumps, then we have this horrible thing we have to deal with. But that doesn't happen regularly. It's just like every time it happens, it sucks.
Right. Like a couple times a year, you have all this pain. And if you haven't been here long enough to experience it, then how would you ever know?
Yeah, exactly.
So true.
Yeah.
So take your time and enjoy this honeymoon phase of your existence. Mm-hmm. I'm only assuming you're new to the team. But if you are, just enjoy it. Don't worry. The pain will come.
I think the pain's already there. They're experiencing pain because they want to help out in ways they don't feel they can yet.
A new kind of pain will come.
I mean, a person on a team who finds the most painful thing and fixes it, and then finds the next most painful thing and fixes it, they buy a lot of goodwill and they create a lot of value. So if that's what you're interested in, you can definitely help out and be recognized for that.
Just make sure you're identifying the right, most painful things. And the way you do that is by talking to people, but not during stand-up.
Yeah. I guess sometimes, too, the most painful thing is very coincidentally aligned with that cool technical thing you want to do. And you're like, the pain is we're not using Kubernetes and it hurts my resume, right? Or whatever I don't know. You got to be careful to take a clear look at your motivations for those kinds of things.
This team has a distinct Kubernetes deficiency.
You know what would be better than a MySQL database? The blockchain.
I was just wondering. I was like 3, 2, blockchain.
Cool. Well, have we answered the question?
We have, but first we need to mention that, lastly, we need to mention that replacing Jira, which is obviously the source of this problem, with a distributed blockchain ticket tracker is clearly a viable solution, I think.
I think you're right, yeah.
I was going to say, the problem with tickets is it's centrally managed.
Yeah.
We need to
That's
take
true.
it to the people.
Yeah, you got to distribute those
tickets.
What if you could somehow use the blockchain for assigning tickets?
Okay.
You mine by moving. See, I don't know anything about the blockchain, and I think I'm realizing that when I talk. Anyways, question answered.
Question answered. The blockchain certifies. You want to read our next one?
I totally do. This is from another anonymous listener. I recently started a new job and a lot of the existing code is really bad. How can I raise this concern or make improvements to the code without offending my teammates who wrote it? I am shocked to hear that there's bad code at your job.
You must have landed at that one company that has bad code.
Yeah. I read a lot of blog posts, and all I hear about is all the good code that people write. They never go back and update those blog posts 5 years later and say, actually, the opposite of all this.
That's true.
Maybe the blockchain could help with that. Anyways, we're poking fun at you, but I think part of the fun is under that is the truth that bad code is everywhere, man. I mean, there's definitely code that's worse than other code. And I can think back and think of the worst code, like the job I had where the code was the worst, but I've never worked anywhere where there hasn't been bad code.
Mm-hmm. The only time I've seen good code is the code I wrote about 30 seconds ago. And then after those 30 seconds elapse and I push it to Git, it's bad. And it stays bad for the rest of its life.
Yeah, I feel like bad code often comes from just the way we build software, not necessarily people being dumb and wrong all the time. And have you ever heard the phrase, if you meet a jerk in the morning, they might just be a jerk, and if everyone you meet during the whole day is a jerk, you might be a jerk?
Yeah.
I feel like that applies to bad code sometimes, where if every piece of code you ever look at is bad code, it's not like you write bad code, it's more like your expectations of what bad code are don't really match the reality of how people program.
Yeah, maybe.
And by that I mean, have you ever had a deadline? Then you've written bad code, probably, right? Like there are things about the way we work that make people write bad code. Changing requirements are often a source of bad code. You wrote it and it was good, and then you had to add one new thing, and then that happens 5 times, and then you had to totally change some core assumptions of it, and you didn't have any time, and you just kind of crammed it in there. Like code just devolves. So there are lots of reasons for bad code. And the point of all this is, I think if you recognize that, it makes it an easier problem to tackle. So instead of going to your teammate and say, this code you wrote is just horrible, and so therefore you must write really bad code and be a bad programmer, you can recognize, like, this was written 10 years ago by someone in their first programming job, or by people under intense deadline pressure, or by just people that were multitasking too hard, or I don't know, just recognize we're human and we make mistakes, and people write bad code and are still capable of writing good code.
Yes.
So you have empathy for them. I think that's the first step. Yeah, I mean, people will be offended if you think they suck, right? There's no way to tell someone you suck at writing code without offending them, I think.
Your code is bad and you are bad.
Yeah, but if you're saying, like, we need to make this better, and I understand why it's the way it is, but we can make it better, I don't think that offends people as much.
For sure. I think you can minimize the offense by about 10%.
Okay.
Just kidding. I really don't like the word bad. I feel like it's a lazy word. It doesn't really describe what's actually wrong with the code. Like, bad could mean so many things. Bad could mean that the variables are named poorly, that they don't match what they actually are used for. It could mean that there's lots of coupling in the system that has negative effects when you try to change seemingly unrelated parts of the system and cause breakage. It could mean so much stuff. And so I think if you're going to go to your team with a recommendation for changing their code, saying bad is like the worst way. Worst is also a bad word in my opinion. Oh, I just said bad word.
How dare you?
It is not a very effective way for getting change to happen on your code base. But if you really want to point out how something is bad, quantify it. Tell them why it's bad and exactly how it's bad. And then it still probably won't help.
Yeah, I really like that, though. There's an underlying thing besides just bad. And I think you're right that bad is kind of a lazy word. If you say it's bad because we have 25 dependencies in this module or whatever, and that is bad because it means that it's probably doing too much work and it depends. Well, see, now I'm even struggling. Why is that bad? I know it's bad, but why?
25 dependencies are bad because every time we want to release it, we have to bump all these revisions, and those things sometimes introduce changes and bugs, and we have to do a lot of testing, stuff like that.
It's doing at least 25 different things because it's using all those. And yeah. So if you can, I like that. If you can specify it. I also think sometimes bad code gets used to mean code I didn't write. Right? We have these strong personal preferences around style and choice. And some people really, really, really like more procedural programming. Some people go nuts into functional programming. Some people think object-oriented is the right way. And even within all these broad definitions, everyone points at someone who does it a slightly different way and says they're wrong and bad. Mm-hmm. So some of it is like the developer who cried bad code, right? It's like, that's not, it's just different. It's not necessarily bad just because someone else besides you wrote it in the way they thought was good.
Yes, for sure. And I think for me, like you said, bad code means someone else wrote it. For me, bad code means someone else or I myself wrote it more than a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like, I come back to my own code sometimes and I'm like, this was such a bad idea.
Yeah, I think recognizing that process in yourself really helps you avoid thinking people are bad for writing bad code. Because if you do it all the time, right? And hopefully you're learning. So every 6 months you look back on your code and you're like, man, that was so much worse than the way I do it now. Why not give other people the ability to learn in that same way? So you also ask about how specifically do you raise this concern or make improvements. I think if you can attack the underlying problem, that helps, right? Were there really intense time pressures on people that caused them to have to just crank it out? Was it a lack of knowledge type of thing where people just didn't know any better, so they did what they knew? And then could that be addressed by training?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes there's like really obvious things where you're like, oh, did you know you've been writing like 4 lines of code every time you want to do this one thing, but there's a helper function you can call that does that for you, or there's an idiomatic way to do that saves you a bunch of typing. Those are the easy cases. The harder ones.
And that's not bad code, right? Like not knowing about some flag you can pass to a function.
Yeah.
That's not. That's the small details. That doesn't. I don't know. That's not what makes a code base bad.
Right, exactly. At worst, I would call that annoying to read because you have to read like a bunch of lines and you go, oh, this is just doing zip, which is a Python thing. But, stuff like that. What was I going to say about that? I think I was going to say those are easy because all you have to do is approach the person and say, look, you can save time doing it this way. And it's actually pretty simple to fix, too, to go back and fix. The harder ones to fix are the things like Jameson was talking about. Like you have so many dependencies, right? It's like, oh crap, I'm going to have to dig through all these dependencies and they've just grown and grown over the years. Or every project has like that one file that's like 10,000 lines long and no one wants to touch it. And it just slowly grows and people only add to it.
Somehow
they never
people
remove
always touch it.
Yeah. And, I mean, it is so hard to fix that. My last company, we actually set up a little metric that we would report on every 2 weeks at our sprint kickoff meetings, where we'd say, hey, here are the people who removed lines of code from this humongous file. Congrats to them. So-and-so removed 50 lines. Someone else over here removed 75, and then we would clap. But it still didn't help. Cool. We still had this 10,000 line file. So anyway, bad code. It's everywhere.
I think the worst way to do it is just roll up your sleeves and say, boy, this code is bad, and go submit a giant pull request. Because for better or for worse, people do identify often with the code that they've written. And if you make a pull request titled, clean up our crappy code, and just submit that, people will be offended. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to make systematic change, you need to talk to the team about it and agree on things that we will do differently now. And then when you do those changes, you're just doing what you agreed on. So we talked about the giant list of dependencies earlier, right? You can say, we want to keep our dependency list small. And then when you go clean that up, you can say, this is doing what we agreed, and here's how it makes the code base better. And hopefully you don't take that too far and then just do other horrible things to follow these arbitrary rules of good code that you set for yourselves. But I think if you get, Dave talked about getting, what was it? Quantitizing? Is that the word?
Quantifying.
Yeah. Quantitizing, I think, is a different thing. Quantifying the harm it causes. So you get the team to agree, this is causing us problems. And then you agree on a solution, and then you just do it. And then people aren't offended. They're just, in my experience, people are generally excited to clean things up because they're usually aware of it and don't love it, right? It's not like anyone loves this horrible mess that they've made. Mm-hmm. Am I totally contradicting myself? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on how entrenched the person is in that style that you're attacking.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And that's where it gets into the fuzzy definition of bad code. But if people have written very deadline-driven code, right? Most people are aware of that and are like, yeah, we got to clean that up someday. So if the team agrees on it and starts to clean it up, people are happy about that. It gets trickier when you're like, this thing that you think is good, that's actually bad. And then that's where you need a little more careful consensus building.
Yes. Also, I think a good way, an effective way, sorry, there's that word good. An effective way.
I think it's a good word.
It is literally a good word. I think an effective technique for making claims about someone else's code that are actionable and won't cause as much offense is, rather than saying this code is difficult, you can say, I found it difficult when I was trying to do X with this code. And instead of just saying this code is objectively universally difficult to work with, you can say, I had this problem when I was trying to accomplish this particular thing with this code. And that's something that can't be argued, right? It's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a struggle you had. And then you can, as a team, you can work on that together. Whereas if you just swoop in and say, this code makes it difficult to do X, Y, and Z, it's very difficult. You could argue about that, right? People could say, well, I don't think it would actually be difficult, but if you actually tried something and had an experience and you can use that, I think that will be much more helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. This sounds like a lot of work. It's a lot easier to just say, this code is garbage, and then go rewrite it all. Yep. I am the bad code Midas. I touch it and it turns to gold.
It turns to bad?
Yeah. No, the other way around.
Oh, okay. I'm the opposite.
Take bad code and I make it good just by looking at it.
Every code base I touch turns into a dumpster fire.
I think that was a different Greek myth. Have we answered the question?
More or less. No worse than we ever have.
Recently started a new job. Yeah, this is a good time to do it. I think new people bring new blood is important. New eyes on a code base is important. And we talked about it last question, right? You can find stuff that people might be used to and help them fix it. So you've got a great opportunity.
Absolutely. You are the canary in the coal mine that has died. You're a dead canary.
So you flew in, dropped dead. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And the final words out of his mouth with his final breaths were, "This code is really bad."
On that note,
we're sorry for your loss.
What's that?
We're sorry for your loss. Wait, what do you say to the person that actually died? Oh, this got morbid.
I'm
Never
sorry
mind.
you died.
I'm sorry for your death.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't encountered that situation yet.
Sorry, I'm uncomfortable now. I'm sorry.
You know what would make me super comfortable is if we told people how they can get their own questions answered.
I would like to share that with you. Go to softskills.audio and click on Ask a Question. You can remain anonymous there, or you can fill in all your contact information. Please don't enter your social security numbers.
I mean, yeah, we'll take them.
Jameson,
we'll keep them safer than some people.
We'll put them on a blockchain somewhere.
Yeah, we'll put them on the blockchain.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Catch you next week.